Hello and welcome to this video on Ansible Modules. Ansible is a batteries included framework and comes with a multitude of modules covering a variety of different areas. We'll start with the setup module, an important module for collecting information also known as Ansible facts. The file module and how we can use this for file-related operations. The color notations used during Ansible execution, and how this relates to a key feature of Ansible known as idempotence. We'll be looking at the copy module and the command module. Lastly, we'll be using the Ansible doc to understand the options available when using Ansible modules. Let's get started. The first one we'll look at is the setup module. This module is automatically called by the playbooks to gather useful variables about remote hosts that can be subsequently used in playbooks. We can call this module directly with the Ansible command to see the variables that are available for a target. The information provided in this command are referred to as facts, and correspondingly, Ansible provides many facts about a system automatically. In the course, we're using Linux systems, but if we were to use this against Windows systems, it would also work. With Ansible 2.10, a significant change was introduced with Ansible collections. The aim of this is to move groups of modules into a collection that can be managed and maintained. The core modules for Ansible, such as setup, have been moved to the Ansible.builtin collection. You would typically refer to these with their short names for these modules, i.e. setup, but it's also possible to refer to this with its fully qualified name of Ansible.builtin.setup. As you go through these examples, you can try both of them out and the outcome will be the same. Lastly, I encourage you here to pause the video and to take a look at the documentation. Let's run this against the CentOS 1 system. For this, we're going to start in the Dive into Ansible, Ansible Architecture and Design and the Modules directory. And here, for all of the examples we're working with, we're going to be working with a simple inventory. What we're going to do is run the setup module against CentOS 1. And if we press return here, there's a lot of information that is gathered. Let's run this again, but this time we're going to pipe it through more so we can see each section of the output. We can see useful information, IP addresses, and what would be system information about the distribution and the architecture. For now, understanding that the facts information is just another Ansible module is our main goal, and we'll be looking at the use of facts in later sections. The next module we'll look at is the file module, which allows you to set attributes and do other useful things with files and symlinks. Suppose we wanted to create a file on all of our systems. We could use the Unix command touch to create a zero-length file or to update the timestamp on an existing file. Using the file module with the combination of path and state, it will provide us with what we need to fulfill the same outcome as the touch command. If we take a look in our lab, and here we're going to run Ansible against all of our hosts, we're going to select the file module. We're going to pass in the arguments for a path of temp test and a state of touch. If we take a look at the file, you'll see that we have a file created on our host which will correlate to the current timestamp of your system. It's also available on all other hosts, so for example, when we ran our command, you may have noticed that the output was yellow. Ansible uses the following color schemes for its output: failure in red, success in green, and changes with success in yellow. If we rerun our previous command, again, this succeeds and we can see the yellow output indicating that there's been a change. Recall, the Unix touch command will update the timestamp, hence why there has been a change. If we were to recheck the file, you'll see that the timestamp has changed since the previous execution. Let's use a variation of the parameters on the file module. We're going to tell it to set the mode of the file to 600. For those of you who are new to Unix, a Unix permission has three components: user, i.e. the user who you are; group, the group in which the file is permissioned against; and other, i.e. everyone else. Each of these, user group and other, are split into three RWX possibilities: read, write, and executable, and each has a value. So for example, a permission of 600 would mean that the user would receive read and write, not executable, and group would be empty. So let's set this permission against our test file. To do this, we're changing the state to file. Again, we have a yellow output indicating a success with changes. If we check our file quickly, we can now see it's the permission we expect, with read and write for user and everything else being empty. If now we rerun the command again, we get a green output indicating that this has been successful. But in this case, nothing changed as the file was already in the correct state on both the local system and all of the remote systems. This is an important feature of Ansible that I'd like to cover here, and it's known as idempotence. Idempotency. An operation is idempotent if the result of performing it once is exactly the same as the result of performing it repeatedly without any intervening actions. So, we could run this command over and over and it would be deemed a success as the file is in the correct state. This feature is especially powerful when it comes to Ansible, as hosts can be in varying states. Providing that Ansible can get the desired outcome, this task is deemed as successful. Let's put this to the test. If we change the mode on this file on one of our hosts, for example, our local control host, and we run our command again, all of them will succeed, but one of them will be yellow, where the change has taken place. The others will be green, where no changes have taken place, but the overall outcome is still successful. And I'm just going to scroll this back up. When we use Ansible with playbooks later on, a playbook will continue to run with a changed or successful state. The next module we're going to look at is the copy module, which can be used to copy files. If we create a temporary file and then use the copy module specifying the source and destination, something interesting will happen, as the source Ubuntu-C is also a target. We are in essence telling Ansible to copy the file from itself to itself. For the other hosts, the file will not exist. Because of the idempotence of Ansible, this will be considered a green success for the Ubuntu-C host, as this will already be in the expected end state. For the others, a yellow change state will be observed. We're quickly going to create a file with touch, and then we're going to use the copy module to copy this from the source to the destination of all of our hosts. And you can see there the initial one that started was actually green. And all of the other ones were yellow. The copy module, as per the output above, uses checksums to validate whether the copy was needed and was successful. We can also use the copy module to copy files on the remote system to the remote system. We do this with the inclusion of the argument remote_source equals yes. We've mentioned this previously, and this is one of my favorites, the command module. Something to consider when using the command module: it doesn't pass shell common variables such as $home or redirection operators. If you wish to use these, you should look at the shell module instead. Again, just to recap on its usage, let's capture the hostname from each of our systems. The command module is the default module, so we don't actually need to specify it, we can just pass the arguments that we desire. And here we'll also use the one-line option. A feature of the command module, which is particularly useful, is the creates and removes variable that can be used for idempotence. If the creates variable is used, if the following file already exists, the command won't be run. For example, let's implicitly use the touch command. Ansible here, rightly so, gives us a warning as we are essentially using a command to do something that Ansible natively supports, as we've seen with the file module. For now we can ignore this, and if you so desired, you could add the command warnings flag to your Ansible configuration file. We're only doing this here to see how we can influence the command module so that we can understand idempotence. If we run this again, because the /temp test file exists, it will skip the command execution. Alternatively, with the removes option, it will only execute the command if the file exists. We're executing the Unix command rm to remove the file, and it's only going to execute this if the actual file exists, i.e., this command will remove this file. And then if we try this again, and we can see here that this time it hasn't actually made any changes because the file doesn't exist. But because it's in the right state, we have a green output showing success. What I'd like you to do here is to take a look at the Fetch module. The documentation is here. I would like you to try and do the following. Create a file on the remote host called /temp/test_modules.txt with permissions of 600. Using the Fetch module, copy the file from the remote to the local. Pause the video for a few moments and give that a try. Okay, for the first part, we can achieve this with the file module. Okay, so that's created our initial file, and then we can use the Fetch module to pull the file back. If we look at the output here, we can see that in all cases it's created a subdirectory and a /temp for each of the host names. And then we have our full path, /temp/test_modules.txt. Lastly, before we close this video, I want to show you one last thing, and that's the Ansible-doc command. In the examples, we've shown the online documentation, but this tool is also available as part of Ansible, and it's great for looking at the variables and syntax available for modules. So, for example, here we can do Ansible-doc on file. And we get a lot of useful information there on how we can actually use this module. Note, at the top, you also have the path to the source code within the Ansible distribution. So, if you really want to know how something works, you can take a look at the individual file. Equivalently, we can also do this for the Fetch module. And once again, we have a lot of useful information. That's it for this video and for this section. Please join me in the next section where we're going to take a look at Ansible playbooks.